On this episode of Ask Mr. Visa, we're going to talk about visitor visas and look at 5 common mistakes that are made that can result in refusal. Stay tuned.
From Sydney, it's the Ask Mr. Visa show, where immigration lawyer Mark Northam answers your questions about migrating to Australia. All information on the Ask Mr. Visa show is for educational purposes and is not intended as legal advice. And now, from Sydney, Australia, senior immigration lawyer Mark Northam.
And welcome to another episode of Ask Mr. Visa. I'm Mark Northam. It's my pleasure to be with you. Now, today we're going to talk about visitor visas. If you like the show, please hit the subscribe button. I'll make lots more of them for you. Now, visitor visas are a very common type of visa to visit Australia. Now, you might be saying, gee, the country's borders are somewhat closed at the moment, which is true. However, normally the country's borders are open and visitors are welcome, and I think that's going to be happening again very soon, certainly before the end of the year, I hope. So let's take a look at 5 different mistakes people make with visitor visas, how you can avoid them so you can increase your chances of getting a visa to come to Australia as a visitor. Let's go. All right. So what are fails? Well, fails are when something doesn't go right. And in the world of visas, fails are when a visa gets refused. And you don't want to get visa refusals. It's not good. It doesn't look good on your record. It doesn't make you a happy camper, and you can't get to Australia. So we're going to look at the 5 most common mistakes I've seen, at least, and give you specific ways to avoid them. Now, also remember, there are 3 different types of visitor visas for Australia. You've got a e-visitor visa, which is typically used for folks from Europe and some other countries. You've got an ETA, Electronic Travel Authority visitor visa, which is often used by people from America and the UK and some other countries. And you have a subclass 600 visitor visa, and that's used for essentially everybody else. Now, currently, it's very, very difficult to get visitor visas, and they may not even be taking applications for ETAs and e-visitors. So, keep in mind that these tactics, these specific things I'm going to show you, will apply for all 3 different types of visitor visas. But a good general rule is, if the country that you are in, the country that you come from, that's the country that you have a passport for, is eligible for an e-visitor or an ETA, and the Immigration Department is currently accepting applications for those, which hopefully they will do soon, then you should go for those because they're generally easier to get. Let's take a look at the 5 reasons. Visitor visa fail number 1, don't ask for too long a visit. If you ask for too long a visit, the Immigration Department gets a little nervous. They say, well, what are they going to do? I mean, if it's a vacation, if you're genuinely going to be here temporarily, the visit duration needs to look like that. If sometimes people ask for 6 months or a year, those can be very, very difficult to get unless you've got an awfully good reason. I find it's good to either ask for a few weeks or perhaps 1 to 2 months at the most. The shorter the visit, oftentimes, the better chance of getting approved. Tip number 2, make sure the visa applicant has sufficient funds to support themselves while in Australia for the length of visit you're asking for. Now, many times the person inviting the person here, that is the Australian perhaps, says, well, I'll pay for everything. Well, that's great, except they still expect the visitor visa applicant themselves to have enough money to pay. So you want to make sure that's the way it's set up on your application. How much money does it cost? Well, that's hard to tell, really, because it depends. If you're coming here and staying in a hotel for a month, your expenses are going to be a lot more than if you're coming here and staying with a friend for a month who's going to provide a place for you to stay. So you should take a look and see what your realistic expectations are in terms of expenses. But make sure you've got enough money, either money in the bank or available credit card limit, that you can show that you have sufficient funds to pay for your visit. Very important. Let's take a look at tip number 3. Now, the Immigration Department expects that visitor visa holders will return to their home country when they're done with their visit. In fact, that's the Immigration Department's biggest concern, is that a visitor visa holder will overstay or will come here and do something else, like look for a job or get a job. I mean, you can look for a job on a visitor visa. They're not going to bust you for that. However, if you tell them at the airport when they ask you, what are you here for? Well, I'm here to look for a job. They may think you intend to work in Australia on a visitor visa, and that's big trouble. You can get turned around at the airport for that very easily. So you want to show with evidence, that is documents that you upload to your application, that you've got a strong incentive to return to your home country. That might be a letter from your employer saying that they give you permission to go to Australia for a month and that your job will be guaranteed to you when you get back. Could be a letter, school enrollment, proof that you're going to be continuing a college degree when you get back, or something like that. Also, if a family member is residing at home, a partner or a child is residing in the home country and staying there, that's another reason. Evidence of assets you own that are not easily transferred, such as real estate or investments or things like that, that you can't easily just transfer to Australia if you decided to stay, which is, again, what the Immigration Department is worried about. So those are some things that you can show, as well as any other things you might have in your particular circumstances, that show that you have a strong motivation to return to your home country at the end of whatever the length of visit is you're asking for. Tip number 4, have an inviter if possible. Now, an inviter is someone who invites you to come, generally an Australian. That can be an Australian permanent resident or an Australian citizen. You should include with your visitor visa application, if you have an inviter, a schedule of planned activities, also known as an itinerary. The letter should mention any support the inviter is providing for you, such as, I'll be giving Joe, or whoever the person is, I'll be giving Joe a place to stay and accommodation, and I'll be paying for most of his meals, or whatever it might be. So any sort of support from the inviter should be in there, and a schedule of planned activities. That can be very helpful. Also might be a good idea to put the passport or some ID so that they can tell the inviter is a real person, not a fictitious person. So that can definitely increase your chances of getting a visitor visa for Australia. Finally, tip number 5, and you've probably seen this on some of those border control TV shows. They're always good for that. Don't arrive in Australia carrying the wrong things. For instance, don't bring furniture. Yes, some people do that. In your luggage, don't bring pictures in frames. That's a classic giveaway that somebody's going to come and stay for a while, longer than they should. Don't bring too many clothes. Don't bring your whole wardrobe with you. Don't bring too many personal items. Don't bring all your expensive or all your expensive jewelry, everything you've got. Don't bring all your important papers. That sort of thing, especially resumes and things like that, can be a dead giveaway that you're here for a long time, that you're planning on lodging another visa application while you're here, that you're going to work while you're here, all those kind of things. So those are 5 of the things that we've noticed are the most common reasons why visitor visas are refused for Australia. Why don't we go ahead and go to the emails? Alrighty, we have 2 emailed questions for today. The first one is, what is Form 80 and do I need to lodge it? Well, Form 80 is a rather long, rather personal form that goes into the makeup of your family, goes into your education history, your employment history, and lots more very personal things. Now, it's used by the Immigration Department to essentially investigate you and look into you, and it sometimes might be sent to officials in your home country as a way of asking them, well, can you have a look at your citizen here and let me know if this person is somebody that we ought to have come here. So there are a lot of different reasons it's used, but it is essentially for looking into your life fairly closely. Now, Form 80 is generally required on permanent visas. You'll find it coming up on your IMMI account where you go to the place where it says Attach Documents. You may see Form 80 there as recommended. even for temporary visas. My suggestion is if you're lodging a permanent visa like a partner visa or a permanent skilled visa like a 189 or a 190 or something like that, just put Form 80 in. They're going to ask you for it anyway. And remember, on partner visas, you only need to include Form 80 for the visa applicant, not for the sponsor. So Form 80 is something I would use on long day. Form 80 is something I would use on permanent visas. I wouldn't bother with it for temporary visas unless they ask you for it. All right, let's go to our other question. Do I have to make certified copies to upload for my visa application? Well, what's a certified copy? That's a copy of a document where you need to provide a document, so you make a copy of it, and then you have someone in a privileged position like a JP or a notary or something like that certify that the copy is an actual copy of the original. So they will usually stamp it, or they'll write on there that I certify that, to the best of my knowledge, this is a true copy of the original, which I have cited, or something like that. Well, if you're lodging a paper application, such as a parent visa, that's a real common one. Parent and child visas are paper applications currently in Australia. So if you're doing one of those, then yes, you need to do certified copies. Unless you're going to send the original of a birth certificate, which I wouldn't recommend doing because you might not get it back. You probably won't get it back, in fact. So if you're lodging a paper application, then you need to include certified copies of the evidence that you're including with it, such as IDs and passports and things like that. However, if you're lodging an electronic application using your IME account, you do not need to certified copies. A color scan of an original is just fine. And that also goes for if you're doing Form 888s for a partner visa or a prospective marriage visa. A Form 888 is a statutory declaration from someone who essentially says that the relationship is genuine. And the stat dec has to be witnessed by a qualified person such as JP, police officer, someone like that. Many times people ask, does the copy of the ID, the government-issued ID that needs to go with the Form 888 to show that the person who filled it out is a citizen or a permanent resident, which is a requirement for onshore applications, does that passport have to be certified? The answer is no. You can include just a copy of the passport biodata page, a copy of the citizenship certificate, or a copy of a granted PR visa to show that the person who made the Form 888 is a citizen or a permanent resident, but that ID does not have to be certified in any way. Well, that's the show for today. If you have any further questions, let us know. Send an email to askmrvisa@gmail.com. If you like the show, please subscribe, and we'll have another one for you tomorrow. Have a great day.